Hello neighbors, it's Brad here from eTrailer, and today we are taking a look at the Hellwig Helper Springs. Now, to kind of break down what the Helper Springs are, it's going to be kind of like an add a leaf. If people have ever mentioned that before, you're truly adding another leaf that brackets around your factory leaf springs, which is really going to help once that starts to flex with weight on it, whether it be payload or tongue weight. Those leaf springs aren't going to be able to completely, cause the truck to sag. This will limit it, but it's also going to help support it as well. So what's really interesting is we've done a lot of different suspension enhancements on vehicles here, whether it be jounce bumpers, airbags, there's also different systems that wedge in between your leaf springs. And for whatever reason, I've just never done the add-a-leafs. And a lot of times it's because you can do it at home, so we really don't get them in for installs too often. Well, this is my dad's truck, and he is retired and looking to get a boat. And he's a little concerned that this little truck can't handle it, which is rightful. I mean, I get it. It's a little truck and he's asking it to do a lot. He's worried about the sag. And so the first thing I offered to do was get some suspension enhancement on here. And looking at the different options, this truck's kind of limited. So I figured, why not give this a shot? And at the same time, knock out a few projects for myself. I've been building a little RC track and wanted a bunch of rock. So the man behind the camera had a bunch of rock at his house. And what better time to test it out, to really get some weight on this truck. So we went unloaded, and it's a normal truck. We loaded it up with rock with no suspension enhancement, and it sagged. So the cool part was we were able to install these in his driveway before the second load and really see the difference. And that's something that I need to point out, is a lot of times in videos I'll say, you can do this in your driveway or garage. We did just that. And that's the cool part with this, is this suspension is very basic. It's just a U-bolt and some brackets that go around your leaf spring, but it's also adjustable. The amount of tension that you apply to one side of it can adjust how much tension is going to fight back on those springs. So if you have a pretty low payload or tongue weight, you can keep it pretty loose. But if you really need to get the most out of your leaf springs, you can really crank it down. Now, something else that's kind of important with that is this style of suspension enhancement is great, but you can continue to add stuff. So I think it's a great first step. It's cost effective compared to a lot of your other suspension enhancement out there. So for instance, something like these Timrins are a great jounce bumper replacement that will replace the factory rubber jounce bumper. And that way the axle really can't compress too far. You can use this with those add-a-leafs and really start to create a package to beef up the truck. And what I found while driving was, well, when it was loaded and no suspension enhancement, it squatted really bad and it feels like it's being tugged down. Now, once we loaded it back up, it was still heavy and a little bit sagging, but it felt like the truck had just a little bit more gusto to be able to do it. It felt like it wasn't straining as much. And I think that's going to be very consistent across the board, just based on the physics of how it works. So with that being said, we're going to take you back in time a little bit to show you our adventure of getting all the rock loaded up in this truck, also the installation, which today is on a 2008 Toyota Tacoma, but it's very similar across the board for whatever vehicle you may have. So let's dive in and see what it's all about. So today, I'm going to be loading up quite a bit of rock in the back to really get this squatted down. I'm then going to be driving it for a little bit to see how bad it really is once we have all that tucked down and the truck squatted, and then we'll be putting our suspension enhancement on to see the difference. So our first step is, well, do some heavy lifting, get this thing loaded up and see how much it really squats. So here's our side profile with nothing in the back. As far as weight, I'm not sure how heavy these rocks are, but I can tell you they're not light, and loading this up, we should see, well, what sag looks like on a truck like this. So we still have plenty of space in the bed, but I think this is about as comfortable I am without overloading this. I still have to drive this a decent amount and go on the highway, so just trying to stay safe here. We still have quite a bit here, and I'm excited to get this unloaded, get our suspension enhancement, and really see the difference. So I'll get this all closed up, and we're gonna hit the road and see how bad it really is. So we're just kind of on a back road doing 55. First things I noticed just driving out of the neighborhood was the steering feel is super light. So it just feels like, unfortunately, the rear suspension can't do a whole lot. So it's just kind of pinned down where the front just kind of wants to go side to side like this. There's not a whole lot of feedback, and
a lot of that comes down to not having really any suspension flex in the back because it's maxed out. We just went over a small bridge, a little transfer there, and it is just kind of up and down floating. It just feels, honestly, when you're overloaded, it just feels like something's dragging you down and back, and it definitely feels logged down quite a bit. Now, it's not as rough really as I thought, but yeah, I mean, you lose pretty much all suspension in the back because it's all compressed. So any side to side, I mean, granted, I got a lot of weight back there, but the truck wants to track forward. Going side to side gets real sketchy and squirrely. So if I was to do that a little bit more aggressive, I could see the rear end kind of cutting loose because it doesn't have that suspension to really flex with. But overall, it's not horrible. It's not great though to be, my parents would be towing the boat for quite a ways, a couple hour drive, and on a highway, not great. Over rough, bumpy back roads, not great. So I'm really curious to see what the suspension enhancement does for it. Hopefully just kind of makes it feel like it can handle it, because right now it feels pretty tired and nothing like this.
So we got the rock offloaded. This will eventually be a little nature path / RC rock crawling course. So the rocks are really going to be put to use, and overall, it wasn't horrible driving it. It's not very, I guess confidence inspiring as the back is down. As I kind of mentioned while I was driving, it just kind of feels like the front just wants to kind of shimmy around. And that's where I think adding this enhancement is really going to make a big difference. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add that on, load it back up, and see if there's a noticeable difference while driving. Now, as far as capacity on our Tacoma today, being a smaller truck, this one's rated at 500 pounds, and it's not going to give you more capacity. You still want to stick to what the vehicle's rated from the factory, but it's really meant for about 500 pounds of capacity. So whether that be a payload or tongue weight, this is going to really account for that. And based on what we loaded, I would say we were probably under 500 pounds, so we didn't quite max it out. But looking a little bit closer at the Helper Spring, we have a hammer tone finish. Is powder coat. This is pretty standard for Hellwig. This is kind of their signature powder coat finish that you'll find on a lot of their products. It's super durable. It holds up to chips and scratches, and really it's going to live underneath your truck, so you want it to make sure it doesn't turn rusty. And I really haven't seen any Hellwig products that have shown rust long term, so I don't think we're going to have an issue there. All of our hardware, zinc coated, really nice. So, just like this is powder coat, zinc coat, it's going to hold up pretty well to the elements as well. So really nice and really easy installation. I already got one side done. Really all you're going to need is a socket, a floor jack, and well, that's pretty much it, because like I said, we're really just bolting down those straps, and what we need to do is get this kind of centered up in a good spot. It's going to be on the rear section of our leaf spring. So from our axle back to where our eyelet is for our leaf spring. And so I kind of centered ours up. And for the front section towards the axle, we need to tighten that down completely. So I ended up using just a 1/2 inch ratchet, and that should really do it. But let's get under and I'll show you how it goes on, and then we can see what it does with some weight loaded up in the truck. Now, the first step to getting this installed is going to be chalk your front tires, put your parking brake on, put it in gear. But with a floor jack, you want to raise off the frame. So if you have a trailer hitch on your truck, that's a great spot to do it. And when we raise it up, we're not going to completely get the tires off the ground. We just want it to where the suspension is going to be unsprung. So close to getting off the ground, but not completely. So we'll raise this up. And something I noticed when I installed the other side is I was kind of wondering if it's really doing anything. And then I realized, well, we got to lower it back down, and that's where that tension comes. So we're doing this right now. We're really it's going to be unsprung. So we're getting it tightened down. But when we lower it, that's when we're going to start to see that tension. And that's where the magic's going to happen. So I'm getting close here. I'll keep raising a little bit. So with my U-bolts, I'm going to get this kind of centered in a spot that I'm happy with. Now, it's one kind of equal length here. There's no special curves here. You might notice there's a hole. That's just for powder coat finish so they can hang it. It's not indicative of what side goes to which. But what we're looking to do is put this and center it up on our leaf spring, and then we'll clamp around it. So let's hop under here. I kind of hold this in place. Like I said, I kind of centered it up, but what I ended up moving it one more time. And the reason being is on this backside, when I had my U-bolt in place here, I wanted my bracket that goes around here, it was sitting in between the leaf springs, and I don't necessarily want that. So kind of what I did to find my nice center point was to just mock this up and get the U-bolt pretty well perpendicular with the leaf spring. So it ended up being right about here, and it puts us, well, where we're at in the front. So the first step is to get the front one tightened down. So once you're happy with that mocking up in the back, I'm going to put this in place and start cranking this down. So I'll grab my spacer plate here. We'll put a flat washer, a nut, and then we're going to just repeat on the other side of that U-bolt. And as I mentioned, this is going to be cranked down completely. So if you have an impact, you can use it. I probably should have grabbed one, but I'm just doing it by hand tools. And so this is really going to keep this in place. And like I said, so right now we have it spread out, but once you lower that truck, those leaf springs are going to start to kind of crimp back down, and that's where you're going to get that tension that really does all the work. So let's get these both loosely in place. Okay. And with those tightened by hand, I mean, it's not really going to move here. I do want to get my other one loosely in place, and that way I can double check to make sure that it didn't move on me and that plate's going to sit behind where our leaf spring stack is. Beautiful. So here we're just going to do the same combo, but we're going to just kind of loosely, you don't have to go crank down on this one. This is just going to kind of hold that in place for us. And with those in place, again, I'm happy with that placement. So we're going to come back to this and crank it down completely. So decent amount of thread here. I still had just maybe 1 or 2 threads showing on the other side when I completely cranked it down. So I don't think you can completely do it just based off the metal being there. But so as far as the socket, 17 millimeter deep well, we'll get this tighten down. And with U-bolts, you really do want to go side to side. Don't completely go on one side, otherwise it can be kind of off kilter. So kind of go back and forth, and that way it's evenly dispersed as you tighten. Oh. Okay, so I tightened that completely by hand, using a 1/2 inch pretty long ratchet. I think that's going to be plenty. And then once we have those tightened down, to make sure that those don't become loose just with bouncing the suspension, we need to double nut this. So grab an extra nut, thread this all the way down, and then we'll tighten that down. And that'll be our jam nut, keep that from backing out. Okay. Now with those tightened, at this point, we're going to lower down our jack and get the suspension to be, well, back on the ground, not unsprung. And I'm going to have my helper kind of lower this down. And this should have plenty of slack here, so don't be surprised if you lower it if it is a little bit loose, because we are going to tighten that down accordingly to get that tension. So let's lower down our truck. So as we lowered, you can see this kind of tilt up a little bit. And as far as tension, there's definitely some there already. Now, if it does shift side to side, don't be surprised as well. So I can move this and kind of wiggle it, but as we tighten it, it should start to kind of draw this back. Because right now I have the helper springs kind of resting against the frame rail, so we'll make sure that that's not the case. But from here, we're going to just start snugging this down, get some tension on here, and this is where you can start to adjust it as far as tension. But really what I ended up doing was I used a short socket on the other side because the exhaust was here, and I just snugged that down as much as that socket let me. And that's going to be kind of my go no-go gauge on this one. We can always tighten it down more if we want a little bit more resistance. And that is the adjustability on here. The more you tighten it, the more it's going to fight back against it. So the more capacity or load capacity that it's going to handle. Now remember, you may want to snug this down really tight so it has tension, but it's not really the purpose if you're normal driving without it being loaded. So when we start to put that weight, as you can imagine, this leaf spring wants to flatten out. this is going to limit it. And so we don't want it completely under tension all the time. Otherwise, that's going to impair our normal driving, or at least the comfort of it. So like I said, I'm just using a socket. This is not scientific, but you know, same with using threads as your tension. You just kind of find something that's a nice happy medium and uniform throughout. Now, before we do load things up, something they recommend to do, and something that's good with every suspension, is I'm going to undo the parking brake, I'm going to get it out of gear, and then put it back, kind of bounce around a little bit, make sure that it's kind of seated properly, nothing's bound up weird. Now, I was a little concerned at first. I shouldn't have been, because as I bounced, I go, uh-oh, it's not doing a whole lot. It feels real squishy, but I tell you what, once you put a little bit of extra weight onto it and kind of bounce, it definitely feels like it has more resistance, whereas that squishiness just kind of continued before. This kind of reaches that threshold where it starts to kind of flex a little bit, and that's where it's already feeling like it's a little bit more stiff in the rear, which is good. So let's put that weight on there and see what it does out on the road.
Here comes bridge. All right, here's that same bridge. Let's try it. Oh, it's more supple, it's less shocking. So it's still extremely heavy, don't get me wrong, but there's no getting around that. And it's hard to, like, I guess, quantify how it feels different, but it feels like it's supported better. It doesn't feel as, I don't know, wimpy in the back, I guess you'd say. It feels tougher. It feels like something is kind of supporting it. Now that weight's there. It's still squatted a little bit, as to be expected, but like overall, it is a huge difference. It feels like the truck can handle it, whereas before I felt like I was doing something wrong to the truck. It's fine right now. Now, as far as steering, it's actually better. It is better. Not that I have more suspension play, I guess you'd say, in the back. It doesn't feel like the front is as loose. It feels a little bit more planted. Overall, really impressed, especially for something that we can install in a driveway in 30 minutes or less. I think this is a no-brainer. The real trick is going to be seeing what it's like after we get it unloaded and if it feels completely stock again. But overall, yeah, very, very happy.
So after our adventure, we ran out of a little bit of daylight to be able to shoot any video, but I got to take this truck out without anything in the back, and I drove it around all weekend, just kind of getting a few house projects done while I had the truck. And I was worried that it would ruin daily drivability or affect it, and it did affect it, but in a good way. Something about this truck factory is just, it's super top heavy. It's very sloppy feeling. It just kind of floats around. Whereas adding the Leaf really just kind of tightened it all up in a good way. It's not harsh by any means, but I found that kind of cornering where normally it feels like it's wanting to lean, this kind of added as an anti-sway to a certain extent because it's limiting that leaf spring. So really impressed overall. It's just as comfortable, and knowing that my dad can load up his drums when he goes and plays music in the back. He's got a camper shell already on here. He almost always has a payload with the camper shell, and then when he's drumming, this is normally the vehicle he takes. So just that little added bump there is going to make the truck, again, feel like it has a little bit more gusto. You can still feel the weight, but it doesn't feel strained, and that's the biggest thing, is confidence. The best towing or suspension enhancement is going to be one that you kind of forget that you have things in the back, or you forget there's a trailer back there for a second because it's acting normal. And I think this was a fantastic addition to the truck. And again, cost effective compared to other suspension enhancement. I love it. So with that all being said, your truck may or may not have just this one section on the leaf spring. They have a bunch of different styles for different trucks. Some of them will span the entire leaf spring, but it's all going to accomplish roughly the same thing. So if you're towing heavy loads or light loads like we have on this, you can find that spring specifically dialed in for your truck. Just make sure that you use our fit guide. And super easy installation. I definitely think that you can handle this. It's essentially just some bolts and a plate, and you tighten it down. Something that you do want to do after driving is go back and double nut, just double check those that they're tight. But beyond that, there's no maintenance involved on them. There's adjustability, so it's checking a lot of boxes. And for a suspension enhancement that I've never done before, I'm here to tell you, I'm really impressed. So if you're looking for that first step to really add some suspension enhancement to your truck, I think this is the way that I would go. And if you do need to get it installed, maybe you don't have the time, the place, the tools, or even the want to do it, you can use our dealer locator, and they can, you'll simply put in your zip code. You'll find a list of shops close to you that can get these installed, as well as any other enhancements or towing products that you may need, so you can be out on the road enjoying your adventures. Now, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to our customer service, where you can talk to a real human that can help you dial in your suspension enhancement, as well as any other towing products you may need in the process. Thank you for joining us on our journey, and hopefully these are going to be a great option for your vehicle.